We have with us up here in the newsroom today Steve Newman, who I know is one of those and characteristic of those who rescued someone yesterday and managed to take him across the river to Liberty State Park in New Jersey. Mr. Newman, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Just please, if you wouldn't mind, you look a lot fresher today than I bet you did yesterday.
That's for sure.
Just tell us what happened, and if you can insert your own story as part of the overall picture of what was happening.
Sure. Well, I was in a livery cab about 2 blocks south of the World Trade Centers when it was clear there was a fire in one of the towers, but everybody that was in the streets, of course, there was all the traffic had been stopped. Nobody really understood what was going on other than that there was a fire. It was, shortly thereafter that the plane flew above and everyone heard it and saw it go right into the South Tower, where pretty much a lot of fear and terror started overcoming, and seas of people started flowing south down West Street. That's the point that I got out of the car and headed over towards the water, heading west. And as I was doing that and got to the west side of the street, I saw an individual coming down that was clearly, he was completely burned from head to toe, and all of his skin had come off his forearms and his face, and his hair was all gone, and looked a little disoriented. So he seemed to be on his cell phone, either talking to somebody or trying to reach somebody. And I asked him what happened. What was amazing about his story was that he was in the lobby of World Trade Center 1 when the first plane hit. And when the debris started coming down, he went back to go into the building to protect himself and was in the revolving doors going back in off West Street when he looked up and a fireball came flying out, I guess from the elevator shafts, that's what he seemed to believe, and blew out all the windows and threw him back onto the street. And obviously, in a fire flash, seared all his skin. But apparently nothing, all his clothes, none of his clothes were burned. So that was pretty amazing. And he was shaking, and it was clear that he needed to get to a hospital. And realizing what was going on, I said, the only way you're getting to a hospital is to get over to the other side of that river.
How did you know at that point that, because there was quite a movement from this tip of the lower west side of Manhattan across to Liberty State Park in New Jersey, how did you know to get across to New Jersey and not go somewhere else in New York City?
Well, I worked down in the World Financial Center, which is where I was heading to, and I know it's about a 10-minute walk to a subway. You'd have to walk right past those World Trade Centers, and I didn't know where any hospitals were south of there either. So to me, and I see those ferries out my window every day, and I said, if you get to New Jersey, there won't be traffic, there won't be police, because all the traffic was stopped where I was. That seemed to me to be the only way to get this guy to a hospital, and it was clear that he was going to be going in a shock soon, and so it just, was the most logical thing that appeared to me, that we had to get him over to one of those ferries.
We saw a lot of ferry traffic on the Hudson River as it now spills down there into New York Harbor itself. And was there just simply a lot of movement of people going over and getting on ferries? Did ferries show up to help people?
Well, that was somewhat interesting, because I felt like I was a salmon swimming upstream going against all the traffic which was going south, actually. And what was also very surreal is seeing all these people coming down crying, but no victims. The only victim I ever saw was this one individual. And the entire time I walked him all around the boat basin, sat at the ferry. There must have been several hundred, maybe 1,000 people waiting to get on the ferries. We cleared them out and were able to get Ken was his name, get him onto the ferry and across the river. So there were a lot of people there, but most people were heading south away from that whole area. And we were obviously heading against the current there. So
well, Ken has a lot to thank you for today, Mr. Newman, and I assume you feel pretty good about yourself, at least in one instance here.
Well, it was, I guess I would say I was lucky too, because when we crossed the river and got to the other side, a police officer met us, and shortly thereafter, the towers, one of the South Tower came down, and you could see where all those hundreds of people were waiting, just what was like in a volcano, It comes down a mountain, all that smoke billowing over and covering all the World Financial Center and coming into the water and covering all those people. That was where we were at. So,
thank you very much, Mr. Newman. I really appreciate you taking the time. As I said, you probably look and feel better in some respects today than you did yesterday. Now, we're going to check in with the president. We're going to check in with the president in just a minute. And
Kenneth, let me take you back to that morning of September 11th. I know you work on the 27th floor for Blue Cross Blue Shield, and you happened to be in the lobby, thankfully, mailing a letter. Tell me what you remember happening.
Well, I walked out the revolving door from the lobby. It's the last door before you get to the outside. And I was going to walk around the building and go up to the Postal Service to get some special stamps. And I had no sooner walked out the door where I heard a whooshing, roaring noise. And I looked to my left, and I see a friend of mine with terror on his face racing for cover. And then I saw several other people that I didn't recognize also heading for cover. And I looked, I'd heard a boom and the ground tremble. And the next thing I know, I was looking up at the roof, and I'm seeing stuff coming off the roof. So I figured my best bet would be to get back into the building so to avoid the stuff coming off the roof. I know as soon as I had gone back into the revolving door when all of a sudden it seemed like the whole lobby, the door I was in, and everything filled up with a yellowish, brownish, combustible mixture. I didn't really smell any different, but it took so quickly to happen. It was like a tenth of a second, and the next thing I know is a major explosion, of which I'm now thrown back out through both of these, through the revolving door and back outside underneath the overhang where the taxis would come in. I was on fire. I quickly put my shirt out and kind of doused my hair and just started to stagger away as fast as I could.
This story, has a lot of pieces to it. Around 8:40, I ended up going down into the lobby. I no sooner got out of the elevator and started towards the door on the west side of the North Tower when we heard a thud. I walked outside through the revolving door, and I look up above me, and I see smoke billowing out of the top of the North Tower. I turned around and said I had no place to go. I could not run the debris that was coming down at me, so I felt that the safest place for me to go would be go back into the building, into the lobby. But I got as far as in the revolving door where all the oxygen, the temperature went up inside the door to like an oven. Next thing I know, I was lying out in the middle of the driveway that leads up to that overpass, and I had been blown out of the building.
He was completely burned from head to toe, and all of his skin had come off his forearms and his face, and his hair was all gone, and and a fire flash seared all his skin. But apparently nothing, all his clothes, none of his clothes were burned. So that was pretty amazing.